I think that Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines gets a bad rep. Now, does it hold a candle to the first two? No. Does it introduce many new or interesting ideas to shake up the franchise? Again, no, not really. In fact, this movie's structure is pretty much a beat-for-beat retread of the second one, more so than any of the other sequels that would follow it. And I'm not gonna lie, even at age 12 when I first saw this film, I recognized that it was inferior to its classic predecessors. Over the years, though, I've come to gain an appreciation for T3, and I disagree with those who lump it in with all of the crappy sequels that followed it.
You've gotta be shitting me.
No, I am not shitting you.
The most common criticism I hear of this film is that it's unnecessary, that Terminator 2 is one of the best action movies ever made, and that it didn't need a sequel. And on that point, I absolutely agree. It didn't need a sequel, and I'm not arguing that it did. I'm just saying that the one we got is perfectly fine for what it is. For all that this movie shares with its predecessors in terms of its basic framework and plot points, T3 seems to actively avoid retreading any of the same material with its characters or its style. This new Arnold doesn't learn anything about humanity or bond with anyone, because we already saw that happen in T2. It would be redundant.
I'm gonna have to teach you everything all over again.
Instead, Terminator 3 turns the idea on its head. This Arnold comes equipped with a whole bunch of fancy new data on human psychology. He's a complete know-it-all, and rather than try to learn about us, he thinks he's got people all figured out, even though he's still mostly an awkward, clueless weirdo.
Your confusion is not rational. She's a healthy female of breeding age. Based on your pupil dilation, skin temperature, and motor functions, I calculate an 83% probability that you will not pull that trigger. Your levity is good. It relieves tension and the fear of death.
The shtick is very funny, and once again, he gets a lot of great lines and memorable moments.
You need a new vehicle. Relax. Relax!
The emotional core of the film this time around comes from Nick Stahl as John Connor and a new character, Catherine Brewster, played by Claire Danes. I like the direction T3 takes John's character. It turns out that the whole hopeful note of facing an unknown future that the second film ended on has actually turned John into kind of a directionless mess. Judgment Day, the thing he was brought up to prepare for his whole life, never happened, which is of course a good thing, but now John doesn't know what to do with himself. He's lost his entire purpose. At the same time, he doesn't want to integrate back into society just in case some other Terminator does eventually come looking for him. Then, when it turns out his fears were justified, he freaks out, since at this point he's now an adult, but still has no idea how he's supposed to go about saving the world.
How? Why? Why me? Look at me, I'm no leader, I never was, I'm never gonna...
It's a responsibility that would weigh down on anyone, and Stahl does a great job communicating how frustrated this character is. I also think this is pretty great casting for John. The guy totally looks to me like he could be related to both Linda Hamilton and Michael Biehn. I like Kate's character too. Kind of the opposite of John, Kate is someone who has a lot of stability in her life. She's got a good career, she's engaged, she seems to have it all planned out. But then everything is yanked out from under her feet. You feel so bad for her, and Claire Danes absolutely sells it, especially during some of the funnier moments at her expense. This movie is actually very funny overall. There are a couple of really dumb moments, but for the most part I like the comedy. Many scenes are even staged like a parody of the second one. The scene where Arnold gets his clothes is hilarious. Instead of a biker bar, he lands in front of a strip club on ladies' night and takes his clothes from a male stripper.
Take off your clothes.
Patience, honey.
The movie uses all sorts of stock sound effects for comedic value. And some of the editing also has some great comedic timing, like a Looney Tunes cartoon or something. A lot of people take issue with the comedic elements in this movie, and if that's a barrier for you, I get it. This is basically not even the same genre as the first one anymore, but again, most of it works for me. The second movie had a lot more comedy than the first, shifting the tone from a sci-fi horror or thriller to more of an action movie, and this one shifts it even further into action comedy territory. Again, it'd be pretty jarring if you went straight from Terminator 1 to 3, skipping 2, but it doesn't feel too bad watching them all in a row.
Talk to the hand.
There's a lot of other stuff I enjoy too. I love the big car chase at the beginning. The scale here just gets ridiculous, and it looks great. You can tell a lot of it is being done practically as well. The bit where he's smashing through this building is awesome. You can tell they actually built this little extension onto the front of this building just to demolish it. The funeral home scene is also a great time. Even despite being long dead in the film, the specter of Sarah Connor manages to be more badass here in T3, having stashed all this heavy artillery for John in her coffin, than she would be years later for her actual return in Dark Fate.
I'll be back.
Additionally, this scene gives us a fun little cameo from Dr. Silberman, who appears for the final time in the series. I also like the idea behind the new evil Terminator, the TX, played by Kristanna Loken, a Terminator designed to defeat other cyborgs like Arnold. She's got built-in futuristic weapons, as well as the ability to hack into and take over other machines.
So, she's an anti-Terminator. Terminator?
Despite all these upgrades, the TX never manages to feel as menacing as either of the previous two Terminators. However, this is still pretty much the last time any Terminator would ever be given a new and interesting gimmick in one of these movies, and she's effective enough, so I'll take it. Her death scene is also fucking metal as f***.
You are terminated.
That's not to say I think this is a perfect movie, far from it. John and Kate may be good enough to carry the movie, but they're still not nearly as interesting or memorable as the characters from the first two films.
What?
Some of the exposition and dialogue is also pretty heavy-handed, where before these things felt much more natural. The movie's also got a whole lot of not very good early 2000s CGI, unlike Terminator 2, which used its digital effects sparingly and so it's aged a lot better. Like, come on, they couldn't have done at least some of this stuff with traditional effects? That's really about it for my problems, though. Again, a lot of it just boils down to this not being as good as the previous one. I think that a lot of the ire for Terminator 3 comes from this line here,
Judgment Day is inevitable.
which kind of spits in the face of the whole no fate theme from T2. And yeah, I agree, it's a stupid line. Not only that, but it's just plain incorrect. Judgment Day isn't inevitable, they stopped it from happening once in '95, and if they'd gotten to the military base just like a few hours earlier, they could have probably stopped it a second time in 2003. They just failed, and honestly, I kind of like that about T3 as well. The downer ending definitely clashes a bit with the funnier tone of the film, but I at least appreciate that it had the balls to end it this way, putting its foot down and definitively saying, this is it, the end of the franchise. We've come full circle since the first movie, and now the fight for the future begins. T3 is definitely the weakest so far in the series, but it's still a fun, enjoyable action film, and it's good enough at what it does for me to accept it as the final chapter in a trilogy. Of course, as we know, the story of the Terminator franchise doesn't really end here. Check back next time where we'll be looking at Terminator Salvation and Genesis. And if you like this video, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing for more in the future, and ringing the bell to stay up to date on all of my videos. Leave a comment down below with any of your thoughts on Terminator 3, and check out some of the other great stuff I've got up here on my channel. As always, thanks so much to all of you guys for watching, and take care.